This is the story of a retired woman from Worcester who thought she was doing something good for her family, but instead it has turned into, well, frankly, a complete nightmare. Paula O'Grady is from St John's in Worcester, took out a trust to secure her family home for the future of a disabled son, but instead it hasn't done that. It's basically wiped out her savings and has caused her many, many sleepless nights. BBC Hereford and Worcester's Emma Davis has been investigating this, and she joins me now. Hello, Em.
Hello, Elliott.
Hello.
Yes, I have been investigating this. So Paula O'Grady, she's from St John's in Worcester, and she invested in a family protection trust with McClure Solicitors in 2011. And this was actually sold to her as a one-off payment of £2,500. And for people that don't know what a family protection trust actually is, it's basically a legal arrangement where someone transfers assets, like a property, which was the case for Paula, into a trust, and that's to protect them from future risks like care home fees or inheritance tax. Now, for Paula, she has a severely mentally challenged adult son living with her, so she desperately wanted to protect her home so that he could continue living there. And I spoke to Jean Newton, a solicitor in Worcester, who actually told me that on an individual basis, there are good reasons to take out trusts as long as they're balanced against things like tax implications, which she did say to me a lot of people aren't actually aware of these implications like tax. And now the firm that Paula used was based in Scotland. It had tens of thousands of clients across Britain, and it specialised in things like wills and trusts. I actually went to meet Paula Elliott at her home in Worcester, and I asked her why this particular trust actually appealed to her to begin with.
My son was living with me, and he had developed a severe disability, and it looked like he was always going to have to live with me. And so the thought of securing his home, and also the fact that I wouldn't have to go through probate, that appealed as well, because of course my daughter has to deal with all the paperwork. So for both my children, it seemed a really good idea. I was told that it would be perfectly straightforward. I thought of it as giving my home away early to my two children. And I was told that you just paid a sum of money up front, and from then on, all the legal side would be taken care of. And if I needed to go into care or I died, my family would just ring this number and everything would be taken care of. It just all seemed very simple, and it just provided security for my family.
So, Emma, where did all this go wrong then? What's happened?
Well, as you heard there, Paula thought that she took out the Family Protection Trust as a way of securing her children's future. But actually, 13 years after she'd bought the trust, she happened to look up McClure Solicitors, only to discover that they'd been bust for 3 years by that point. And this meant that all wills, power of attorneys and trusts were then passed on to Jones White's solicitor by an administrator. Now, Jones White told me that they are not a successor firm of McClure's, and that this is just common practice when a law firm goes out of business. But this is how Paula felt when she discovered that McClure's, which is the firm that she trusted with her family home, had actually gone into administration.
Absolutely shocked. I thought Jones White would just carry on the trust as it was. Never occurred to me that I'd have to start paying for things all over again. So first of all, they offered me a review for £400. That was only to say what was on my file, not to do any work. And then they sent me through a list of their fees, which was absolutely terrifying because they were huge. And it was obvious I couldn't afford to either dissolve the trust or actually do much with it. The other thing I did was send away for the title deeds to check. And there were 3 people shown as living at my address. There was no mention of the fact they were solicitors or the house was in trust or anything like that. There were just 3 people who I'd never met living at my address. I was horrified. Perhaps I should have realised, but I just didn't.
Now, according to the Law Society of Scotland, because McClure's is a Scottish firm, they say that it is the responsibility of Jones White to contact the former clients of McClure's, but Paula says that she actually got in touch with them. I contacted Jones White, and they said that no former client of McClure's is obliged to have Jones White manage their trust, and are free to instead take advice from any solicitor of their choosing, but there will always be a fee involved. They also say that they have and continue to contact former clients of McClure's in a measured and sustainable way.
All right, so what happens now then? Where does this leave Paula?
Well, the collapse of McClure's meant that some clients actually struggled to sell their late parents' homes, for example, but there were others that faced new legal bills that they weren't expecting. And in cases like Paula's, where former solicitors at McClure's are still named as trustees on a client's home, it means that they legally do not own the property and therefore they'd struggle to sell it. Luckily for Paula, she was in a fortunate position where she was able to do something about her situation, and she actually got a new solicitor who was, I think, was from the West Midlands, who dissolved her trust. And as it stands at the moment, Paula's title deeds will change immediately if she dies. But of course, going through all of this, she was retired, and so all the legal fees actually wiped out her savings. Because of this, she has now made it her mission to warn others who had a trust with McClure's all about her experience.
I mean, I was absolutely desperate. I really just didn't know which way to turn. I didn't really want to confide in my family too much. I didn't want to worry them. My initial outlay was £2,500, and it just cost me about £1,500 to sort it. So yes, I'm sorted. And my first thought really after that was to try and get the word out to other people, because I felt I'd been lucky because I'm in my late 70s. I've still got the means to be able to do things for myself. Because you think you're doing something for the good of your family and potentially just making their lives absolutely impossible. So yes, you obviously started out doing something with the best of intentions, and when it went wrong, it was horrifying.
Now, I contacted the former managing director of McClure's, who is actually a man called Andrew Robertson, and he did decline an interview with me. But he did tell me that if it wasn't for COVID, the company would still be trading and that their clients would have nothing to worry about. He also told me that all of our cases were taken over by another firm of solicitors, which, as I said, was Jones White, who took over almost all of our staff, including me. It was their obligation to advise clients and give them the choice of instructing them or using someone else. This took a while as a result of the volume of clients, and the house would be transferred to the trustees. He also said that the trustees were selected by the client, but they recommended partners in the firm who were expected to be there until retirement and the client. He says that this was better than including other relatives of the client, but it was the client's choice, There was no advantage to the firm. And actually, he's previously told the BBC that the company traded legally, in good faith, and in line with all professional guidelines and standards. And according to one of the latest episodes on Rip Off Britain, which actually looks at this, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which regulates law firms in England and Wales, has investigated the issues relating to McClure's, but because the former partners of the firm have taken themselves off the solicitors register, this means that the regulator cannot actually take any enforcement action.
So what advice is there then for people who might have had a trust with McClure's, or if their family members did?
Well, that's a great question, Elliott. And earlier on, BBC Hereford and Worcester actually spoke to Jean Newton, who is a solicitor in Worcester, and she actually answered that same question.
Well, absolutely, it's got to be reviewed, because at the moment, these former partners of McClure's are the ones who hold the purse strings and make all the decisions, and will be looking for more money in the future. So it's extremely important that it's looked at. And people, if they want to move house, they can't just put the house on the market, because they are not the ones who will be signing to sell the property. It will be the McClure's partners, former partners, who are the ones who have to sign to sell a property, and then also deal with the money afterwards and decisions about the trust. So it's absolutely essential that anyone with any of these type of trusts, and I say it's not just McClure's, there are lots of others out there, get some proper advice from somebody who is a specialist.
There we are. That's Jean Newton with advice for anyone who might have a trust with McClure's. Before that, our reporter Emma Davis with that report. It's actually listening to that. It's when my mum passed away, in her will, we've got this thing whereby, and apparently this is quite common in wills now. Instead of everything passing to my dad, some of it's gone into trust to me and my sisters. So it isn't the same kind of thing as this, But just to echo something that was said in there, trusts are quite complicated. There's nothing illegal or dodgy about any of this, but they are legally quite complicated, as we've been finding out. Now, for example, if I went and moved house tomorrow, I'd end up copping for double stamp duty or the higher, whatever the higher rate of stamp duty is, because now I technically own a second property. See? So, I mean, there are reasons for doing it, perfectly good reasons and perfectly legitimate reasons, but it has consequences, as clearly, poor old Paula has found out with all of that. But, really interesting stuff, that. And thanks to Emma Davis, our reporter, for having a look into it. It's BBC Hereford and Worcester.